Alright, so now we're going to get to the Mountain Men / Mount Weather. When we first see Clark at Mount Weather, she's wearing a tank top and shorts, and neither of them are sexy. The tank top doesn't cut low, the shorts are boxy and long, they're really shapeless. This shows that her state of undress is not meant to titillate, that her situation and surroundings are more important. It is very rare for a show, especially on the CW, especially dealing with people around this age, that they would be in some state of undress and it isn't meant to titillate. I'm very impressed that very often they do this in the show. There's one scene outside of a love scene that they do that, and it's when the kids first get to Earth. But for the most part, if you're in a state of undress and it's not in a love scene, it's utilitarian. That's good costuming. The Mountain Men are the current generation of survivors that live in the shelter under Mount Weather. Everybody looks nice but faded. These people are people who had money or were on the upper echelon of science or education. Everything the Mountain Men wear is beautifully taken care of, even though it's both faded and stained from years of wear and washing. Everything is a Wes Anderson level of pastel. Just like with Sky Crew, the guards in Mount Weather respect their uniforms and have very little disrespectful wear. I love how absolutely threadbare and everything is. I love that the pale dyes from multiple washings over 90 plus years. I love the clothing the 40 plus kids and the 100 have been wearing is soft, like it's made of linen, a cotton gauze, or like a chambray. Everything is pale enough to be almost white with dyed deposits on the seams. Like in Clark's zip-up hoodie, it's got kind of like aqua in the seams. It makes sense to me that the people of Mount Weather enjoy fashion since they had money and status before they went into the bunker. They got to choose what they could bring with them. Maya, who's in charge of decontamination, has a very sweet dress in episode 2 of season 2 that looks very 1940s, but a modern version of 1940s. It's very sweet. The fact that it's probably synthetic is the reason why it's wearing in such a weird way compared to the things that are cotton. It's a clever touch. The decontamination suits are robin's egg blue, which makes them look less scary. They look like they would have looked about 100 years ago, which is prior to what was about the 2050s, but the color seems soft and safe. The people who aren't wearing blue are wearing coral or butter yellow. The only thing I wonder is how they're able to keep those colors in 96 years of washing. The girls in Mount Weather wear dresses. It's kind of the first time we really see dresses out in the world, sort of, even though they're under the world. They don't have any hard, heavy labor. It's really easy to live in the bunker. Next, we have the City of Light. Short and sweet. Jaha started a virtual reality cult. Not going into it. In the City of Light, everyone looks like they're in New York or London in the 2010s, but with way more hats. Just way too many bowlers. So now we're getting later in the show, kind of halfway mark. The Allegis prisoners, they were a mining ship that were used to mine stuff in space. They went into cryosleep for traveling. This happened right before the disaster. So in the late 2040s, early 2050s, that's all they have memories of. So they've been asleep for like 100 years. The prison industrial complex, am I right? They're military looking prisoner onesies. They look old-timey. They kind of look like old-timey butchers mixed with old parachuting guys. It's an interesting look that looks just slightly enough in the future from where we are right now, but not enough in the future to look futuristic that I buy it. You can tell the armor has been sitting while they were in cryo for about 100 years because there's rust on the edges. The integrity of them is still really good, but there's a lot of rust staining on the fabric. It's interesting that Diyoza is pregnant and the armor on her seems mostly to be in a barrel shape, like it was made for a bigger man. But they did a really good job of disguising the fact that she was pregnant until she took off the armor. The armor's pretty shapeless, but I think if it was on a dude that shape, it would have fit him really well. This shape of body armor on a woman really hides the pregnancy. Good job. One thing I love is we have another graphic tee, just like Jasper, and Diyoza appears to be wearing some sort of band tee. There aren't many graphic shirts in it, but they're doing it to keep it timeless. But if you see a graphic tee, it's to give you a clue. So this shows that whatever that shirt was from her time. Very clever. Eventually, when the next disaster happens, everyone, including Wong Crew, leaves Earth. They put on Aegis outfits. So now we get to 6 years after the next disaster, which is right as Aegis, the last group, comes back. So what happened during that disaster was the people who could make it went into this bunker. So welcome back to the Grounders and Sky Crew, everyone. I appreciate that most of Sky Crew, the kids of the 100 and the Ark, are dressing more like Grounders because they've all kind of been around each other for a while. Abby is dressed very similarly to her daughter, Clark, in season 2. Kane is pretty much the only holdout. He grew his hair out, that's it. It looks like the Grounders, who are high-ranking officials or guards, are still kind of wearing their full Grounder gear at most times, but everyone else in the bunker is pared down to just bare essentials like shirts and sweaters. Octavia's become Blood Reina. She's the Red Queen. She looks like a Grounder Napoleon. Her makeup is terrifying. It's all red and made of blood. She commands attention. Leading the last of the Grounders after being the girl under the floor is an intense transformation. She also has Grounder tattoos, just all over. The metal spine on her jacket is a little on the nose, but it still works because shots don't linger on it. So back to color symbolism. This is an instance where we see the most amount of pure red that we've seen in the whole series. It's as though they've all been stained with blood. Everyone in the bunker has changed because of what they went through. And again, you'll have to just go watch it. So Space Crew. So right before the disaster, when most of the people went into the bunker, we had the rest of the people go into space, and they've been called Space Crew. They tone down the clothes they wear, and they just kind of are comfortable. Even Amori, who usually wears a headband, she still wears her Grounder headband, but she's dressing like the other kids. Their look is, in essence, a little bit of Sky Crew and a little bit of the Grounders, just more toned down. They have the same kind of layered belt stuff and more of the kind of belts you'd find on spaceships, less rustic. More jackets, no corsets, and eventually everyone's reunited. Space Crew lands, Clark is found by the Aegis crew, and Wong Crew is rescued. Several incredibly frustrating things happen in the story. A lot of that leads to changes in character. Bellamy went full Grounder when his sister burned a farm down. I can't figure out if it was that he wanted to give Octavia a false sense of security, or he feels like it's going to be the best armor for the job, but he's ready to be a warrior. When Aegis ruins everything, the remaining people get on the Aegis and escape. So this is the last place we're gonna go. Season 6 brings us to Planet Alpha. Space Crew, for the most part, appears to be wearing stuff from the ship, styled with their clothes on the Ark with slight Grounder elements. Most of the things were supplemented by Aegis stuff, so the kind of military look that they had. Clark is the only one who's starting mostly in full Grounder gear. Everything is black with the exception of Amori, who's wearing a really casual blue hoodie. In episode 2, we see Clark getting to wear something pretty again for the first time since she was with Lexa. She also wears a pretty bra for the first time in the entire series. She's the first person to wear a pretty bra in the entire series. I know it's a weird thing to draw attention to, but it also kind of shows that they get to have luxury on this. Well, it's a moon, it's not a planet. For the most part, they continue wearing their own clothing. There are a small handful of characters who wear clothing of Sanctum, and there are very specific reasons. I think this is supposed to show class and make a divide. People on Sanctum appear to have a wardrobe. People from Earth have a finite amount of things. So now we get to Aegis 3, the people who founded Sanctum. Aesthetically, Sanctum is beautiful. It's absolutely the most beautiful season, and I really like how it looks, but I have questions about where they got their garments. Did they bring a bunch of fabric? Did they bring a bunch of supplies that were clothing-based? Like sewing machines? The kids have a lot of nice shoes. Do they have the capability to make molded sole shoes? I understand having a cobbler, but that's sewing and leather and cutting. It's not making a rubber mold, and if they're doing that, where did they get the rubber? Your costuming should not create more questions. I'm not seeing any factories or large workshops. I don't doubt that they have a cobbler. That's a trade. It's easily done by the skills of a tradesperson, but Unless they brought a supply, I don't understand why over 200 years in the future, these children have beautifully well-maintained molded sole shoes. It makes sense to me to have somebody who knows how to weave fabric. All the fabric looks really wispy and beautiful. That's something that could be done by hand, absolutely. But there's not a factory. There are no factories. Most of the kids have kind of a boho thing going on. Lots of flowing prairie dresses. And as far as the adults go, again, did they bring a supply of fabric? That would make sense to me if they were colonizing with a big group, especially in a modern era. But they're not going to put a plethora of designers and clothiers on a ship with a bunch of farmers and scientists. It just doesn't make sense. I don't expect that the descendants of this civilization wouldn't be into that kind of thing, like fashion, but to bring that much fabric in the hopes that maybe someone might be into fashion, it just seems a little bit weird to me. If I was going to be colonizing something, I would hope that the thing that I found would have those resources, and then the next wave would address them. When the people from Sanctum board the Aegis ship, they have incredibly clean ventilator masks and uniforms. They have to have some sort of production house, right? Some kind of factory. I don't doubt that with almost 2 centuries worth of technology, they couldn't do it. I'm just not seeing it on the screen. They have fields for crops, and they've got a palace, and they've got a machine shop, and they don't appear to have any factories or any other sort of buildings for that type of thing. I see no smokestacks. I see nothing that shows some sort of production is in place. All right, I've calmed down. But also this kind of shows you that I don't think this show is perfect. It's really, really good, but when you get to something that's aesthetically pleasing only, you tend to gloss over some things. So the teenage girls and the young adults, they seem to be wearing sort of a mixture of our current fashion and Greek stereotypical fashion. I like this because fashion is cyclical. We see trends like when Mad Men was popular, we saw a 50s, 60s trend come in. When The Great Gatsby came out, we saw a 1920s trend. We've seen multiple 70s trends since the 70s happened. Fashion is cyclical. It totally makes sense and I like it. And while I like it, I get very frustrated when they do something where it's cyclical, but they don't do anything to set it apart from something that happened in the past. And again, it's over 200 years in the future. So weirdly, the only ones who look like they've changed their fashion in any way are the primes. I feel like over 200 years in the future, fashion would have evolved in some way. Maybe it didn't because they had limited resources. Again, that I understand. For the most part, everything looks like it was from 2016 with a twist, a little Coachella meets cottage chic. There is very little, if any, leather. It's hard to tell if they brought any animals with them to Alpha. This is another instance where it would have been nice to indicate if they brought something like materials or animals or even domesticated animals themselves. The only domesticated animal we see is one dog. Everything else we see is monster bugs and snakes. So now I want to deal a little bit more with the primes just by themselves. They have fashion because they appear to be in a utopian society where they want for nothing and they can partake in things that are frivolous, funny rabbit ears, such as fashion. Russell Prime is their leader and he's dressed like future 1700s meets the Matrix in most of his episodes. The primes have decadent clothing that's reminiscent of old Earth royalty, very specifically the 1700s, without it being cosplay. Russell, like Octavia in season 5, is wearing a very Napoleonic outfit. In episode 4, he and his wife are wearing, again, 1700s inspired clothing, but it's all very soft looking, like it's made of natural fibers that have been made from plants found around the planet. It's a very clever choice. If you're going to be wearing something inspired by leaders in history, it absolutely makes sense that you would do it with silhouettes that would work well with the materials you have available. He also wears things that are equal parts 1700s France and East Indian for naming day, which I think very much makes sense with the whole colonization theme. He's wearing this painted laurel crown, which is really interesting but also such a time-sensitive choice. It's painted here and then attached to his hair here into one continuous laurel. The thought and the design that went into the hair of the primes is quite obvious. The styles don't look dated, they don't look anachronistic, they look like they might actually be pretty futuristic. It looks like the hairstylists on this planet have a lot of fun figuring out new ways to do hair, especially since each prime seems to have their own style. When Josephine, the daughter of Russell Lightbourne, gets her new body, she makes a point of saying that she doesn't like what she's wearing, so she goes to change, and it's a scene. So then the next time we see her, she's wearing really comfortable, languid, long, flowing dressing robes and comfortable silk pajama pants. This shows that the people of Sanctum, especially the primes, have clothing choices. They have wardrobes. So the Grounder girl, Amori, was a scavenger on Earth, and she and a character named Murphy, who's kind of the bad boy jerk of the group, they've always been trying to survive. So this is the first time Amori gets to be a pretty girl. She's so fancy, and Murphy, the bad boy, he puts on guy liner and he is also fancy. They both get so fancy for this ball, and it's the first time they've gotten to wear nice things. I love a glow up in a dystopian story. When Clark is looking at a forbidden memory in Josephine's mind, it's taking place in the 2040s, and it's nice to see that you can tell it's in our near future. Everything is casual wear. Nothing's incredibly trendy, but it looks like stuff that's not dated. They're sitting in a normal diner, wearing normal things like scarves and tees, which have existed for ages. Josephine has product in her hair, a first. She's got a contemporary headband and a hairstyle and jewelry. It looks like it's set in a very specific era, and I like it. I appreciate that Murphy is affecting the makeup that Amori has as a tattoo, because he loves her so much. It's sweet because he's never seen her as different. And lastly, but not leastly, we have the Children of Gabriel, who are a rebel faction on Alpha. They have these ghillie suits with beads, and they blend well with the colors and textures of the weird plants on the planet. It looks like it's just found object or whatever they brought with them when they defected. They appear to dress in a similar manner to the Grounders, but with only what they had available, so it's very different looking. And I have one other nitpicky costuming question. Where did they get wooden craft beads? If they defected, did they think to bring craft beads with them? Because these are obviously beads made on a lathe. They're the kind of beads that you get in the craft section of like Walmart or Michael's. They're, those big wooden beads. I don't think that if I was in the woods plotting revenge, I'd be sitting around perfectly carving individually little round craft beads. If I was going to do that, I would just do it as fast as possible. I wouldn't paint them. I'd maybe throw some berries at them, but they're obviously painted with paint. Do they bring paint with them into the woods? But I digress. So Octavia and Dioza, the leader of the Allegius criminals, start wearing the same clothing as the Children of Gabriel. It's a very smart choice. Octavia, who is always acclimated to the group that she is a part of, in a smart and cunning way, not in a passive way, it absolutely makes sense that they would do this to blend in. And one last point. At the end, Space Crew looks like they are wearing comfy, cozy, warm, and snuggly clothing for the first time as a whole. And I just kind of love it. I know it's a weird aside, but it's nice that they just kind of get to be comfortable for once, because for over 200 years, they didn't get to be. Anyway, I don't know how they do it, so I'm gonna go. I'll be right back. Okay. Now to pose a question to you, friends. If you were creating this future, what would you do to clue people in as to why they were dressing that way? What would you do to explain the production of the garments and belongings in season 6? What is your favorite look of the series? What are you hoping to see in season 7, which is the last season? All right, I will be revisiting the show when the final season airs. I am excited to see how it concludes and how the clothing helps to tell the story. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Cinematire. Please like, comment, subscribe, and check out my Patreon. There you can find production notes and other observations that didn't make it into this episode. Until next time, mebioso na hi choro o nodatai. May we meet again.